CFO Focus. For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Kathleen Alexander, and I'm a partner with Sachs. Through the CFO Focus seminar series, we strive to bring timely business advice on issues faced by CFOs and other financial managers. There are a few housekeeping items we need to go through before we get started. First, the webinar that we're presenting today and the slide deck will be emailed to each of you within 24 hours of the seminar, so there's no need for you to take notes. We'll send you the slides after the fact. 2, if you have questions, we have a chat box that's in the control panel, the webinar control panel. So if you have questions, you can put them in there and we'll try to answer them throughout the seminar. And third, if you want CPE credit, you must stay connected the whole time. You must answer 75% or 3 out of 4 polling questions. And then you must complete the participation course evaluation form, which you'll see in the control panel under handouts. And then you'll email that certificate to the address on the bottom of the form. And we will email back to you the CPE certificate within 1 week. So to get started, we're going to go through our first polling question. And how important is technology to your business? Select one of the following: very important, it's becoming more important, not very important at this time. Please make your selection. And if you're having trouble submitting your vote, just click escape and it will let you then probably enter your vote. So we're just going to wait a little bit for the group to complete their voting. And we're over 80% complete. So let's conclude the poll. And of course, 88% said it's very important. And that's why we've chose this topic for you today. So let's move on to firm events. You know, I'd like to give you a little update on what's going on inside the firm. So I just want to share with you that Sachs was recently ranked on the top 100 list of accounting firms in the country by Accounting Today and named a best tax firm in America by Forbes magazine. In addition, our wealth management division, Sachs Wealth Advisors, was just listed as number 29 by Accounting Today on their Wealth Magnet ratings of the top 150 firms by assets under management, making the $1 billion club. So we're very excited about these awards for the firm. In addition, as we talked about last time, in April, we announced our joint venture with Safari Solutions to form S2 Technology Solutions. This partnership was forged to further enhance Sachs's technology services to our clients. So that leads us to our presenter for today. Today we have Carl Van Dusen, who is the president of S2 Technology Solutions, and he's going to start our discussion today on technology transformation, creating successful change. Carl, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your day. I know it's very precious, especially at this moment in our history. So just some quick background on myself. I'm the president of S2 Solutions, the two organizations that have come together to now present to you the ability of delivering technology solutions to all of your organizations. We'll dive a little bit into that as we go today. We're really going to take the opportunity to talk about the importance of technology overall. So two organizations that are focused on advising customers and clients like yourself on both technology and accounting, coming together to form the joint venture called S2 Solutions. Our tagline is very prescriptive and important to how we approach all of our customer base, which is ensuring that we have a partnership in place that is delivering innovative technology while driving down operating costs and increasing top-line performance, which is our entire mission together as two organizations. So we deliver advisor services to create turnkey end-to-end solutions We are not a siloed technology organization. We are a think tank that then delivers technology to our end users. All aspects of technology, from planning to delivering day-to-day operational solutions, to migrating and transforming into a cloud environment, leveraging unique tools to be able to communicate back and forth, especially now. We're seeing that more and more in this pandemic, which includes video collaboration and unified communications. And then obviously connecting yourselves to the internet, which is obviously something that is extremely important. Doing that in a cost-effective fashion, which is one area that we know and we've seen over our tenure in this industry, that is an area that has a level of bloat and costs associated with it. All things that we can help drive down and help you through your navigation of technology. Just some of the customers, the obligatory slide with a bunch of logos on it to show you the customers and clients that we advise today. Some relatively large organizations nationwide, including Saks, as we engaged with Saks originally. We are an advisor to Saks to help support not only their internal technology, but also some of the exciting things that they're doing as they continue to grow. Within there, we've supported a number of different organizations. The subset is not a very specific silo. It's all across the map. So we have expertise and knowledge in banking services, in insurance services, nonprofit organizations, large sport management organizations, you name it, we've seen it. We understand how to iterate specific for our clients and can help ensure that everyone is successful. And again, that mission of driving down operating costs to increase top line performance. Some of the technologies that we have expertise in, subject matter expertise, and have access to. Another obligatory slide with a number of logos on it. But you can see all the major manufacturers and players out there that I'm sure you're consuming today, all areas of expertise that we have. So let's jump right into it. The technology landscape and how we fund technology engagements has changed dramatically over the past 4 or 5 months, specifically due to the pandemic. And as you can see, the ways of working and strategies of ways of working has now pivoted to where the normal investments that you most likely would make inside of your organizations are diminishing and decreasing, and the focus is really on 2 specific areas. The first one is technology, and the second one is obviously sales. Sales is an enabler for top line revenue. Technology needs to be there to support it, not be something that acts as a hindrance. So investing in technology is an absolute critical must at this point in time in our pivot point of society to ensure that we can all be successful in driving our businesses forward day to day. So if we look at the next slide, if you look at the next slide, you can see there's 2 new areas that have really created an understanding of the long-term success. This was upside down a few months ago, and now with the pandemic, you can see that we've transformed what we're now doing in our workplace to be able to support long-term success. It comes down to resiliency and agility and work flexibility. Obviously, the work flexibility is something that is key. When we all decided we needed to start working from home, how quickly we were able to transition, how quickly we were able to do that without impacting our day-to-day business, ensuring that not only our workforce was safe, but our business was able to continue to operate without much of a blip was obviously very, very important, which goes to the resiliency and agility. How fast can we deal with marketplace transition, societal impact, and ensuring that we can continue to stand up our businesses and make sure that they're safe, sound, resilient, our employees are safe, and we're able to continue to conduct business day to day. So obviously a very new focus. Before, the focus was driving new business, doing things in a different way, driving down operations, how we serve our customer, how we engage with communities, participating in large events, creating opportunity for different uniqueness in how we engage our customers. Now we're really at the point where we've changed that, and we're really talking about how resilient and agile we are, and ensuring that our workforce can work basically anywhere for extended periods of time. So a few years ago, there was a conversation that many of you probably had, which was we need to go through a digital transformation effort, and that effort was probably driven by someone inside of your C-suite, CEO, CIO, CTO if you had them. Now the decision has been made that digital transformation is being driven by the coronavirus that we've all been dealing with. So what do we do? How do we get there? What are the things that we need to focus on? Obviously, the first thing and foremost, which everybody has probably heard of, is security is now an absolute top concern. If you're working remotely, The impact that that may have on your environment to work remotely has large vulnerabilities associated with security. We're seeing 1 in 4 companies are having actual incidents associated with security that might be creating a brand impact, whether it's a phishing event, whether it's some sort of random virus that's put on a machine, some sort of ransomware, something that potentially could impact your brand, including data piracy, which is obviously a massive aspect that we all need to be very, very careful of. So working remote and being able to stay in communication and transact while we're working remote is absolutely critical. If we don't have the systems in place, working remotely is not something that can be successful. And if we do have the systems, we need to make sure that those systems can allow us to continue to transact business day to day, which all could be part of a digital transformation effort, whether it's from a website that needs to be different or how we work internally. All of those pieces of the puzzle are part of our digital transformation, including over time talking about a business continuity plan, which we'll talk about as we go here. Data is now absolutely critical that it's integrated into systems together. We can't have multiple different systems that we're managing day to day. It creates this fragmentation. It creates this need to invest in multiple different systems over a long period of time, which creates, again, that operational cost and maintenance that is just continuing to start eroding the top line performance that we want to get to. Data integration allows us to remove that fragmentation, allows us to create a unique user experience that basically creates a one-stop shop, which is absolutely important to our users. As you've seen, when you go to a website now to order whatever you're ordering online for curbside delivery, you want it to be as seamless as possible. If you have multitude of data, a fragmentation of data across multiple systems, you're going to find that it's very impactful to the positive user experience that you're trying to create for either your internal users or your external users. We need to make sure that the technology team understands clearly what the new business strategy is. We can't pivot business strategy knowing that technology is going to be a pivotal need for the overall new strategy without aligning the team to it. I've seen a lot of cases where the top leaders of the organization will make new business strategies, but we haven't necessarily talked inside of the technology organization to make sure that the thinking can actually be executed on and the art of the possible doesn't just continue to be an idea that can't actually come to reality. So we must align the technology teams on the new business strategy. If we can, the earlier the better. As the strategy is being developed, bring in the technology team. If that's not possible, please do that prior to driving the strategy or the solution down into areas of the organization or into the marketplace. Technology investment is now a priority. The other slide showed that. We now need to make sure that some of the other investments that are happening in the organization are not overwhelmingly offsetting the need to invest in technology. The laggard technology solutions that some have in place will create massive security intrusions and potentially an impact on both users, the brand, and your ability of continuing to drive business forward in this new world that we all live inside of. Digital transformation is the absolute #1 focus to ensure that everyone can be successful, consume the tools, the data, and ensure the brand can continue to drive forward. So how do you get there? How do you maximize the impact of your technology investment to make sure you're getting, as they say, your biggest bang for your buck? There are basically 6 pillars that I would really focus on if I had the opportunity of advising and talking through with you, and we'll drill into these individually. Hyperconvergence, which is driving simplicity into your organization through creating speed and execution through a number of different practices that we'll get into. Simplification and centralization, we'll talk through that, and I have an example that kind of shows how simplifying technology allows for users to consume more and more systems in a centralized fashion, which again gets into the cybersecurity aspect, which is creating a one-stop shop to make sure you can manage, understand where your data is, how that data is being consumed, understand if you have a vulnerability or an intrusion, and be far more proactive in driving your day-to-day operations without living in fear of how technology is potentially impacting your brand. Business continuity, we've all felt it. If you've had to move out of your building and work remotely and now have to worry about the building being a central point of focus and maintenance and operations day to day, having IT people potentially go into the building and manage servers, etc. How do you create an environment that does not have the building become a critical piece of your operation so you can talk about business continuity in a different way instead of talking about technology driving it? We'll talk about how business process can drive business continuity, and we'll get into that. The infamous moving to the cloud. How do you get there? What's the plan? How do you develop a strategy? What makes sense? How do you right size that so you're not investing too much into your cloud offering that then potentially breaks other areas of the organization that need to have a focus and an investment as well? And ultimately, it all comes down to a full package of digital transformation. Those are the 6 key pillars of ensuring that the investments you make, you're focused on, and these areas have to be taken care of in sequential order to ensure that you can be successful. And again, driving down your operating costs, increasing your top line performance. So as we look to what hyperconvergence is, next slide, Margaret, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. One more, please. So hyperconvergence is wanting to manage things easier to allow for users to not necessarily need to have customized skill sets. And if we do that easier, we can drive change faster. Next slide, please. We want to be able to quickly execute, and we want to be able to adapt to the change quickly. The most important thing about technology is ensuring that the organization is able to adopt the technology, adapt to the technology, and leverage it day one. If we have technology that we drive into an organization and we don't have adoption day one, you most likely are going to have stranded cost that we want to try to remove from the ecosystem as quick as possible. If we do this in the right efficient fashion, leveraging hyperconvergence, we have a speed to market, and the market could be your internal users. And then we have a quick level of adoption to allow us to spin down legacy systems without having to live them in parallel for a period of time, which again has that high level of operating costs that we're trying to drive through. One more slide, please. We need to be able to spend wisely. Simplification will allow us to have a high level of speed of change. With that, we're going to lower our startup costs, we're going to allow for flexibility, and we're going to start small and we're going to scale over a period of time. The idea isn't to necessarily have a big bang. It's more around being able to right size what the need of technology is right now, but build the technology solution that is either bought or built, and build and buy it in a way that makes it so we can scale over a period of time, again, in that crawl, walk, run type mentality, instead of having this massive investment day one and then trying to figure out how to get everybody to adopt it. You go through a test and learn. You find the right subset of users and individuals that make sense, or clients that make sense, and then you start driving that technology into the larger population over a good period of time. Next slide, please. So simplification and centralization. We're using a Microsoft example. So most of you probably consume something of Microsoft today. Even if you sit inside of, let's say, Google Suite for most of your day-to-day operations, you probably have some Microsoft license that you're consuming. So we wanted to drive through this a little bit. So Microsoft offers an all-in-one business solution. It's called Office 365. You can centralize the management of your files. You can leverage SharePoint. You can leverage OneDrive, and you can make it so now you don't have these fragmented data solutions out there that you're storing unstructured data with. You can have them all sit inside of one central repository and then share them out in a secure fashion with a solution that's ensuring you're safe and secure at all periods of time. Microsoft offers an integrated unified communication tool. Some of you may use it today. It's called Teams. It was called Skype for Business. Prior to that, it was an acquisition called Skype. It's gone through a multitude of different iterations. Microsoft created a product called Lync, which was the beginning of their unified communication tool. How do you leverage communication? How do you use the communication to better your business? How do you use it so it doesn't create this fragmented approach inside your organization that might not necessarily create efficiencies? You know, the last thing you want to do is have every meeting start 10 minutes late because everybody's fumbling to figure out how to log in, how to push the button, how to turn on their camera, unmute themselves. Having a unified communication tool that's easy to use, that's succinct, that brings everyone together in a quick fashion is absolutely critical, and ties all of the different function of your day-to-day operations together. Making a calendar invite, sharing information via email after the meeting might be over. All things that you want to think about. Whether Teams is good, bad, or indifferent, that's not my opinion to offer today, but really thinking about what the right integrated solution is to make sure you don't have fragmentation in this space is very, very critical. Unified communication is an area that there's a lot of organizations that have fragmentation to today that increases that bottom line performance day to day. And those are the things that we're trying to get to. Single sign-on. If you have fragmentation in your organization, which we all do, you probably have multiple usernames and multiple passwords that you have to use to gain access to systems day to day. If we're able to remove that type of multiple fragmentation again and bring everything centralized together, that creates efficiencies. It also creates the ability of having a centralized, managed security environment specific to users, allows us to turn on and off systems far faster. So if you're onboarding new employees, it's a one-stop shop. If you're offboarding, it's very secure, so you're not worried about multiple systems that that employee may have access to that you now need to make sure that you have secure as they leave the organization. All aspects of ensuring you have the quickest way of executing, again, creating efficiencies for your internal teams. Cohesive user experience. This is one that we've all been struggling with for a good period of time. As the cell phone has come about, then the tablet has come about, and carriers are creating more and more abilities of us communicating over 4G, 5G, wireless internet services. Now we need to make sure that we're able to leverage all of these tools anytime, anywhere, from any device. And I'm sure we've all been struggling with needing to access systems internally of our facilities today, where you're logging into a VPN, or you don't have a VPN and you're doing a remote desktop session to gain access to your QuickBooks environment because it lives on one individual's machine inside of their office. All variations that create this clumsy user experience that we want to tie that all together and think about. Microsoft has solutions, others have other solutions. There's plenty of solutions to create this one-stop shop, anywhere, anytime, any device type mentality. And then user management, I highlighted that a little bit from the single sign-on experience. Trying to make sure that we have the most efficient way of onboarding and offboarding employees is absolutely important, so we can not only keep ourselves secure, but also keep ourselves as efficient as possible. Next slide, please. So with that comes the cybersecurity buzzword. We know it's out there. We're changing the buzzword. Instead of being cyber secure, it's now about how do you become a cyber resilient business. You can put all the things in place that you want from a cybersecurity, but it comes down to how do you consume them as a business. And there's three steps, three conversations that we can have here. First, what is cyber resilience? We want to make sure that we have a bend, don't break approach. So you can put all the security in place, and then your users are inside of this container that doesn't allow them to be successful every single day, creates inefficiencies, multiple places that they may need to go to ask for authorization. We want to do things in a way that approach securing our business and combines the discipline of cybersecurity with business continuity and enterprise resilience. We don't want to create this so rigid, secure environment that doesn't allow our business to operate, but at the same point in time, we want to ensure that we support the overall enterprise being as resilient as possible. So during a threat, we have the ability of still operating and not having to shut down our operation. And that's what goes to bullet number 2, which is, why does it matter? We want to still be able to operate our business inside of an actual threat or a sophisticated attack without having to shut down our business and stop operations. If we do this in the right way and we create a resilient cyber business model, we can still participate in day-to-day operations. There might be some changes, but we're not shutting down our organization. If you heard about Mondelez International a few years ago, where they had a large cybersecurity attack inside of their ecosystems, Mondelez International is a large snack food organization. They had 14,000 servers that were impacted. They actually had to shut down their bakeries worldwide for a period of time while they were taking care of the cyber attack. So they weren't making their cookies, they weren't making their candies, they were completely and utterly shut down. They've now approached their cybersecurity in a way that they've now created the ability of still operating if they have a catastrophic attack inside of their network, which all of the aspects that they've taken from now, I don't think that'll ever happen again. But if they had the process in place prior and they were thinking a little bit further out, not just about how they're secure today, but how they operate their business if an attack occurs, they would not have the impact they had on their business. And they were not making cookies for almost 3.5 months, which is obviously a massive billion-dollar impact to their bottom line. Where is it going? It's going to the place that now we need to make sure that security has a role in the organization that starts at the top. The leaders now need to really ensure the communication about cybersecurity is driven down and has the highest level of importance and management associated with not only application, but how employees are consuming day-to-day data and technology to ensure everyone can be successful. This is a top-down approach. If the top is not aligned with the investment, top is not aligned with the brand being impacted by security, most likely the further down inside of the organization, you'll get less and less compliance and ability of having us all be secure and act in a secure fashion. Next slide, please. Poll number 2, I'm going to pass it back over to Kathleen, and we can execute second poll.
Thank you, Carl. And so our second polling question, do you have cybersecurity concerns with the increased use of technology within your organization? Please select one of the choices. Again, if you're having trouble submitting your vote, please click Escape, and then it should allow you to record your answer. Okay, we've got a majority of the results in. And there's no surprise that yes was the winner in the choices here, that cybersecurity is certainly something we're all concerned with. And then I will pass it back to Carl to keep moving through.
Thank you, Kathleen. So just on the cybersecurity, we're happy to have any conversation to just even understand what you're doing today and give you any pointers as you go through trying to continue to create the most robust cyber practice for your internal users and ensuring that you're safe and secure. It's obviously a very important piece of our ecosystem. People are getting much smarter every single day on how to have intrusions to us. So happy to help wherever we can there. So on the cybersecurity topic, this plays directly into it. The more and more we can remove the office space from being a critical piece of our operations and have it just be a meeting place, the more and more secure your organization will become. The reasoning for that is now you don't have disaster planning that is now delivered and required by the technology teams to be part of. You can create a disaster plan that is delivered by the business, talking about how do we operate our business and how do we continue to drive business and continue to create top line performance during a disaster, instead of needing to talk through how technology systems need to be either fortified, supported, or user experiences need to be continued to support it in a way that makes everybody efficient day to day. The last thing over a period of time that we want to have done is have to deploy IT professionals to a building that may put them in harm's way or require us to have unique operations that could potentially have operating expense that you wouldn't necessarily normally have during a day-to-day operations, but now that expense has gone up due to access to a building, special systems that have to be put in place, all variations of continuity planning that we want to try to remove from the ecosystem and have it really be focused around how do we just simply operate our business and not worry about the technology that's inside of a building. So some of that technology I've highlighted, a phone solution. If you have to have your building continue to have internet service to support your telephony solution today, it's an area that we want to talk through and find potentially ways of presenting your phone system on the internet. All variations of security can be layered in place, all things that are part of removing that day-to-day operations of requirement to have the building running. File access, email security, video conferencing. Those areas are where you can find a one-stop shop. I use the Microsoft example again. There's plenty of them out there, including Google, that offer solutions that allow you to no longer need to have that server sitting inside of a closet or a room or a basement to continue to have your email and your files accessed day to day. You can lift and shift that environment, put it into a cloud offering, or we'll talk through some of the crawl, walk, run approaches to get to a cloud offering over a period of time that still has you using your servers, just not inside of your office space. Building controls. If you do own your building and you have the ability of, managing your HVAC systems and fire controls and security systems, how do you take all of those systems and make it so you can still see what's happening, still ensure cooling and heating can occur in your building, but not have to actually have boots on the ground or people in the building that are supporting that? User management notification. If you did have a disaster, how do you make sure the full business community, including your internal users, have an understanding of what you're doing as an organization to A, keep your employees safe, B, ensure your clients have an understanding that you're still open for business, and do it in a way that's effective and professional. Cyber insurance reductions. If you do all of this and we find the right way of removing the day-to-day operations of a building and have things sitting in the cloud, your cyber insurance will actually go down. Cyber policies are built today to ensure the worst case scenario. If you don't have a worst case scenario associated with your building, then that's not a piece of the insurance that actually has to be consumed. Then you move the risk to providers. You move the risk to a Google or a Microsoft or companies like Cologix that create what's called a co-location environment for your servers to live. You've now reduced your risk, transferred that risk to another organization or service, and allowed you to, again, drive down your day-to-day operating costs associated with technology. Again, that dovetails right into your building insurance. If you don't have a data center inside of your building, you're not needing to insure your building around that data center, around that operations, around the HVAC system that always needs to be running to ensure your servers are cool. All variations of business continuity and planning that A, create a whole new level of security, B, create a whole new level of flexibility and agility, and C, again, drive down that operating costs to ensure that we can all continue to drive our business day to day. Next slide, please. So moving to the cloud, I highlighted this a little bit, the crawl, walk, run. We want to build a strategy that is driven by a day in the life of your users. We never want to build a technology offering without understanding that our users are the most impactful, verbose, opinionated individuals, and we need to make sure that they clearly understand what we're doing, how they're doing it, and maybe we'll learn from the conversation to ensure that as we start creating the strategy of getting to the cloud, we're not impacting things that we may not have visibility or line of sight to. Talk about the art of the possible. If you had all the money in the world and operations and all the time in the world, what would you do to be able to support us doing things differently? Gain the alignment on what that art of the possible looks like and that model, and then from there, create the strategy that makes sense over a period of time. Again, this isn't a light switch approach. You're going to start someplace, and where you start, you're then going to incrementally grow that starting place to drive your strategy overall in probably a multi-year model. Use tools that are not unique and that create tremendous user impact. We want to ensure that we're not customizing and we're configuring. The most important thing that I've learned throughout my tenure is I never want to go and customize an enterprise resource management tool such as your we want to be able to support the customization without having to do that through a configuration model, which means we need to go and we need to understand the tools that we're trying to consume, understand the delta between the business process and the tool that we're trying to consume, and find the right tool that allows potentially our business process to be changed a little bit, but our tool never to have to be customized to support our business process. If we do that in the right way, the user impact will be tremendous. The back-end support will be, again, not a skill set that has to be unique inside of your ecosystem. And ultimately, you won't have a high level of operating cost because it's buying an off-the-shelf product that we're doing some tweaks and customizations to. We want to focus on the change that is most impactful to operations and finance. Those are obviously the first areas that I would call are kind of the low-hanging fruit that we want to make sure we can execute as quickly as possible, because those changes will most likely help self-fund the next phase, which could be walk. So I highlighted a few of them. Unstructured files, and I highlighted this in my use case for Microsoft. The less fragmentation around where files are stored will, again, drive down your costs. So if you have the finance team saving things in Dropbox, and you have your graphics team saving things in some iCloud solution, and you have your operations team saving things inside of a fragmented Microsoft solution, finding the ability of putting all those together would be ultimately the best way of having a bottom line impact out of the gate. Your telephony solution, making a phone call. Most of the time when we look at organizations, there is a legacy phone system that has legacy telco needs to support it. If we can find opportunity to renegotiate those telco needs, to find new telephony solutions that make sense, we'll most likely be able to do two things. A, drive down your telco costs, which is a great thing to be able to do, and B, remove a lot of the internal unique skill set required to be able to support your telephony solution. It's not removing resources, it's being able to align those resources to be more efficient in other areas of the business instead of having to worry about a unique skill set specifically to support your phone system. Legacy legacy applications. This gets back into the customization. Most likely, you probably have an application that was kind of homegrown at one point in time, and you're continuing to have to support it with either unique skills internally, unique skills externally, or having to kind of dance around the tool and try to have your business operations support the tool, because it takes a lot to be able to lift and shift that tool out and build and bring something else in. So if we can find those legacy applications, modernize them, or create a plan for them over a period of time, that will have obviously a massive impact on the biggest bang for your buck. And I can never say it enough, security is an area that we need to make sure we're not vulnerable in. So with that, create a day one security or a resilience plan around our security, and then continue to have that just be a foundational piece of all stages of the crawl, walk, run approach. We want to develop a runway to manage users and the financial impact. We never want to just say, oh, cut and run, and we're going to start using a new system. There's going to have to be a plan. There's going to have to be aspects of that plan that may take multiple years to get there. Knowing if you do have a legacy application, let's say it only runs on Windows 7 with a browser that's a legacy browser, only runs on Firefox and doesn't run on Microsoft or Google, whatever it might be. We want to take time to develop that product to make sure that it's right, that it complies with all of the new technology out there, and we don't want to do things in a way that is too fast to be able to support the technology that you might need over a period of time. We want to go through an understanding of why we might not be moving systems, so we have a clear understanding. If the why is, well, we just don't want to touch it, we should challenge that a little bit. If the why is because there's a compliance requirement with HIPAA or other variations of compliance, then that obviously has a core piece that we need to drive through and either understand how we're going to impact compliance or what our process is over a period of time to move those systems out without impacting compliance. We want to ensure that our business process can support the new technology. We never want to actually execute on a technology without knowing all aspects of the business process that's going to have to consume that. We never want to have that one dangling business process out there that we didn't have part of the technology approach, because then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be customizing specific for that business approach that we missed out of the gate, which then creates this cycle of never being able to strategy. We never want to actually execute on change without having a strategy in place that allows us to drive the change into the organization, have good conversations about why the change is there, and preemptively be very much ahead of the change in our conversations. End users and customers are very noisy, and they're never wrong. We never want to say that they're wrong and we're going to do things differently. That's, again, why we built our strategy at the beginning of aligning ourselves with a day in the life, creating an art of the possible, to make it so when we get down to the bottom of it and we're deploying something, we have a good change management strategy in place. Everybody knows what we're trying to do, where we're coming from, the why is very clear, and we're able to execute without having to go through realignment of the reasoning for the approaches that we have in place. Next slide, please. So let's talk about digital transformation. 9 months ago, every organization that I've ever had experience or exposure to, and there's a lot of them, 92% of those companies would basically say that they were executing on a digital transformation effort, but it was something that had a 3 to 5 year roadmap, and they were going to get there over a period of time. It was understood what the ROI is, but it wasn't necessarily business critical because it created distraction in the organization to the underlying drive of continuing to create top line performance. It was a nice to have about 9 months ago. Now, inside of what the COVID virus has done, digital transformation is a critical mission must. If you don't have a modernization that's executing inside of the digital space, you most likely are no longer going to be able to survive in this new world and this new way of working. So instead of ROI being a conversation at the C-suite level, it's now an RSA, which is a realistic survival ability. How long can I survive inside of this marketplace with the new dynamics associated without being as digital as possible to make it so I can be agile, nimble, realistic in my offerings to my customers and my internal employees, and be able to change on a dime to deal with some of the societal aspects that came with this coronavirus pandemic. Next slide, please. Poll number 3, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Carl. So polling question number 3, where can I find the CPE evaluation form to obtain my credit? In the handout section of this webinar's dashboard, outer space, from me, or you have no idea. If you have trouble submitting your vote, click escape, and then hopefully it'll let you enter your vote. Some people think outer space. That's interesting. Okay, we are almost completed with our voting. Give it a couple more seconds. Okay. Good. And then we're going to close our voting. You've all been paying attention. Of course, you're going to find the evaluation form in the handout section of the webinar dashboard. Okay, Carl, back to you.
Thank you, Kathleen. So how do you get there? How do you make sure that all the things we talked about, and I know I threw a lot at you in a very short period of time, how do you make sure that you're able to execute on all of the aspects of building a technology strategy, having the impact of your investment be very well executed on, not have stranded costs, and again, execute on the mission that we're all focused on, which again is bottom line performance with top line performance as well. So the idea is you need to leverage a partner. You'll never be able to most likely execute on the strategies that are extraordinarily aggressive without engaging a partner at some level. You can have a partner that sheerly supports advising on what's needed to build a strategy and then have the internal technology team be able to execute on that. The idea of leveraging a partner is create focus around the strategy, knowing that day to day, if you have an internal staff or another partner that might be executing, they're most likely focused on ensuring that your systems stay up, that your technology that you currently have in place is healthy, and that your users are able to be supported day to day to create the most efficiency possible when there are technology challenges with your existing ecosystem. So the idea is to find a partner that allows you to create the focus on the plan to be able to drive that plan into a reality to ensure that we have all the different aspects of these bullets captured off for. We want to drive simplification. We want to ensure that we have a best-in-class cost model. We want to ensure that the systems that we put in place create technical support that's consistent. I'm sure you've all had the challenge of having a bad technical support engagement. The idea of simplification with your technology is to allow for the complexity no longer to be there, to allow for the support to be extraordinarily consistent and the same every single time, knowing that there aren't nuances associated with your technology space that sometimes require different levels of escalation inside of your support model. You want to make sure that your partner that you have in place or your internal team that you're leveraging has an understanding of how to navigate the marketplace. As you know, the first proposal you get from a manufacturer is never the best proposal. How do you make sure that you're managing those proposals? How do you make sure that you're competing everybody at the right level to drive down those costs associated with the technology solutions that you're going to consume? In most cases, a partner that you bring in is going to have market exposure that is able to help you navigate negotiations driven by the sheer capacity that that partner has been able to negotiate with other clients on their behalf. So you can use that overall scale of a partner to be able to help navigate and negotiate your best-in-class cost possible. If we're able to navigate the marketplace together, it probably means that we have a really good understanding of the innovation that's out there in the marketplace because we've seen it all. And with that, having a partner in place that can help understand what's out there, some new things you may want to think about, help think about the overall strategy that could be 3 years or 5 years out to kind of future-proof your technology investment day one, all aspects of the innovation that we want to make sure is out there. If you do this right and you find the right partner, that partner should have a cost that is a fraction of the cost of a full-time employee. There is no way that a partner that you bring into your organization should be costing you more than an overall full-time technology employee, whatever it costs. That's the whole reason that the partnership should be one that's advantageous, because you're going to get the full breadth and depth of an organization and all of the employees inside of that organization for less than it would cost to hire a full-time employee. Next slide, please. So here's a few use cases to be able to understand some of the impact that you can get if you do bring on the right partner that understands the organization and understands how to drive the technology through. So this use case is a large organization that was based in the domestic US that had multiple satellite locations. They were growing aggressively, driven mostly on plans of mergers and acquisitions over a short period of time. With those acquisitions came a couple things that they realized that were creating bottom line performance challenges. First, obviously, when you go through a merger and acquisition, there's this integration phase. You'll never have an integration phase completely remove technology that may not necessarily layer in properly to the organization that's being acquired from the organization that's being acquired. So with that, they had multiple different fragmented providers, multiple different fragmented partners, multiple different fragmented technology solutions. The idea was to consolidate those, again, drive down complexity, create simplicity, and overall centralize critical areas of their business. They wanted to improve their telecommunication. We talked about this before. It's kind of table stakes to find telecommunication providers and the bloat associated. They wanted to improve the management of those telcos. They wanted to ensure that there was a higher level of response time and installation time, knowing that they were going through this mergers and acquisitions, and they needed to have internet service provided at a far faster rate than they were able to get before. Obviously, they wanted to reduce overall costs. With any merger and acquisition comes a requirement to start driving down costs day one. It's just a critical aspect of an integration phase. And they wanted to enable technology to become far more proactive and less reactive and far more business focused. See, the idea here is if you put in the right systems and you have all the right things in place, the systems themselves can be far more proactive in driving business efficiency, and the team has to be less reactive in supporting them day to day, and they can be far more business focused. If we do this in the right way and we deploy in the right way, again, the internal teams can now focus on the day-to-day business and how to drive technology differently and have the business consume technology differently instead of focused on the operations and making sure that at least it's running. It's an augmentation to the existing team is how we engaged, which was, again, there was an internal IT team, a C-suite that was focused on technology. They were needing to bring in a good partner that was able to do all the things that we talked about in the prior slide, which is executing on the focus and ensuring that all of these aspects were captured off to ensure that they were, again, able to focus on the bottom line and the top line simultaneously. They also wanted to ensure that all aspects of the technology that they were consuming was clearly documented and understood, so there wasn't any areas of that infamous shadow IT, if you've ever heard that in the marketplace, that was happening, so they can ensure that they were ultimately as efficient as possible and there wasn't any fragmentation. Through that, developing an overall roadmap that allowed them to understand what the future state would look like and how to be able to then build a phased funding model that had a multi-year strategy of that funding to get them to their end goal. Instead of having this nebulous, hey, I need X amount each year, there was a clear understanding as to the why, there was a clear understanding what we were investing in, and over a period of time, we would be able to get to the final state of the strategy driven by a very clear, concise, well detailed out funding model associated with the plan. Next slide, please. So the results of that, we were able to go and find multiple six figures of savings across 1 year that was just driven by all of the things that we have talked about in the past: consolidating the services, negotiating rates on our clients' behalf, ensuring that we had full line of sight to all aspects of their carrier environment, and at the same point in time, transitioning them from a legacy phone system into a new cloud VoIP solution, which allowed them, again, to reduce their internal skill set that was required. They were able to repurpose individuals and not have them focus specifically on phone operations day to day, and allowed for the uniqueness around legacy phone system that a carrier is required to support, analog phone lines, faxing systems, etc., having all of that be removed from the ecosystem and consume an internet-based solution that allowed for that uniqueness and complexity to be removed from their ecosystem. We created a full technology architecture framework. Inside of that framework, I had a very detailed model that actually detailed out what the best-in-class cost model was to drive simplification over a period of time. We aligned both the business and the technology functions, so the business understood exactly what we were trying to do, also understood what the roadmap was to be able to support them differently with technology needs. Again, we detailed out what the art of the possible is. We went through a day in the life, understood some of their challenges, what they thought was a need at the business level, and put that into the overall framework and technology architecture that we developed. All of this was to increase the agility and scale the abilities. So the idea of this is that we were going to be able to make things faster for them to consume day to day. We were going to make it so that if they did have mergers and acquisitions that happen, they could scale very, very quickly, and at the same point in time allow for the internal unique skill sets that were supporting legacy systems now to be supported in a different way, and allow for internal teams to learn differently, learn new technology, and continue to scale their internal support abilities at the same point in time. And with that, we deployed a strategic funding model that had 5 years very clearly detailed and roadmapped out. There was no question whatsoever over a 5-year period of the budget that was required to support not only the run of technology, but also the capital and the build perspective of technology. It was all very clear. There weren't any surprises. We maintained that roadmap throughout a 5-year model to ensure absolute success for our client. Next slide, please. So here's a fun use case. A very large, well-known accounting firm in New Jersey, headquartered in New Jersey. They were looking to move their corporate headquarters from their current location in New Jersey to a new location in New Jersey. We were asked to come in and help design a space specifically for the move that would be an innovative technology solution that also allowed for flexibility in the workspace and allowed for the workspace to expand and contract as needed, and do it in a way that was extremely cost effective, that was leveraging space uniquely, and did not have them in an ecosystem that they weren't able to move, add, and change at a rapid pace without having to do any massive investment from a technology perspective. They had internal systems that were, I would say, traditional, and they were looking to bridge the gap between the traditional thinking and systems into an emerging technology space while ensuring that they were able to support a very good operational cost and have some savings associated with the emerging technologies that were put in place. One thing that they also wanted is to not have complexity around the players and contractors that were involved and have them have to manage those players and contractors internally. So we acted as the owner's representative for this client to be able to support all aspects of contractor management, architectural engagement, all the details associated with ensuring cabling was in the right place, rooms were doing what they were supposed to be doing, make sure drawings were up to date, make sure contractors knew what they needed to do and execute on, to allow for the internal leadership of this organization to not have to be mired in the day-to-day management aspects of a build, but also ensuring that the coordination across all of the different contractors that are required to be able to make a build successful were all in place and driving in the right direction to ensure we lowered any risk associated with change orders, etc. If any of you have ever redone your kitchen or bathroom, you know the pain it is when you have multiple contractors in doing all the same things simultaneously without anybody kind of watching over all of that. You see change orders come very, very quickly. We worked in partnership with the architecture firm. So instead of the architects having to learn and understand from separate contractors on what they did and what their uniqueness was and how it all blended into their architecture drawings, we were able to act as that one-stop shop for the architect to, again, allow for speed to happen. Instead of having multiple people on phone calls and multiple different questions that had to be asked to multiple different contractors and subcontractors, we were able to have very rich, dynamic, partnered conversations with the architects, which drove down the speed, or drove up the speed, excuse me, in being able to develop drawings and get them out to the marketplace to start executing on the build. And the emphasis on the entire build was creating a rich user experience that allowed for adoption of the technology of the workspace to occur, and starting the conversations about what the new space would be, what the new technology would be offering as soon as possible inside of a rich, dynamic change management practice. So next slide, please. So with that, the results were very evident. We were able to have confidence in the technology decisions and the spend that was made. We had very clear analytics that showed what we were doing with technology, why the spend was required, and we had all the right decision making associated with that. And it was very clear on the investment, the return on the investment, and the reason for why the actual technology was being deployed. We created a solution that was well designed, well integrated, as we highlighted before. The integration, the simplification, the centralization, integrating data so it's in one place, not having the building be this place that required technical expertise and impacted business continuity, were all aspects of the thinking here. And we were able to develop a future-proof technology offering that allows for day one needs to be met, and then as we scale or as technology moves, there aren't these massive investments that'll need to take place in order to use the new technology that may come out over the next 10 years or so. There was an investment protection, which was just what I said, the future proofing of the technology. We know what we have today. It's not overbuilt to make it so that there isn't the ability of agilely moving to a new technology if it comes about that is something that our customer wants to consume. And we did things in a way that was clear on how to move to the next layer of technology as needed. And today's investment is one that was clearly understood. The capital investment was minimal. The consumption of non-customized solutions was part of the entire ecosystem, and we've made it so that there isn't anything unique associated that won't allow us to continue to just evolve with high levels of investment needed. The end user satisfaction was absolutely critical. Having good training, having good understanding of the why, having a clear understanding as to when things were going to happen, what things were going to look like, going through models, going through high levels of conversation, all part of that, I would call it touchy-feely aspect of change, as no one likes change. What we went through to ensure that everybody could be understanding of what was happening, how it would impact them, and the positive aspects that this change will have once we get over the change curve. The existing staffs and leadership are able to focus completely on their day-to-day core initiatives. We have had zero reduction in productivity, and everybody's been able to focus on continuing to drive business. This move did not do anything to stop the day-to-day operations. There have been no pauses in operations, and with that, the leadership has been able to clearly focus their efforts on continuing to drive the business to a level of success, even in this tumultuous, challenging time that we have. And with that, through this process, if you have the right partner in place, the collaboration amongst the vendors is absolutely critical. To be able to have the vendors work together to understand their spot and where they fit and what their business will be for the next upcoming years is absolutely critical. If you do that in the right way, you can have multiple vendors playing in the same sandbox together, and they will collaborate, they will communicate, they will ensure the success of the client because they know that they have a place, and with that place comes a level of trust and collaboration that they're going to be part of this ecosystem for a good period of time. The seamless move with day one usability, that's critical, right? When you move, the last thing you want to do is have an impact on the organization where you're not able to continue to drive business, where you've had to, send out an e-blast to your stakeholders and say, hey, today, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to transact business because we're moving. It's going to be exciting. We'll be to you soon. We had none of that occur. Everybody was able to move and continue to drive their day-to-day operations and business. Next slide, please. So talking about a building and getting back, it's my last slide for you today, which is if you're planning on going back to the office, just a few relevant things that you may want to think about. And I've boiled this down into an acronym, which is SFP, which is safety, fact, and peace of mind. We obviously want to keep our employees and our visitors safe. We need to operate inside of fact. As we all know, as we've been watching everything evolve over the past 3 or 4 months, fact is the only thing that creates our ability of truly having an understanding of what is going on in the marketplace and the ecosystem. If we do not react to fact and we react on anything outside of fact, we probably are going to create some impact to our organization and business that's not going to be a level of success. All of this is to create peace of mind for our employees and ourselves as well. We want to make sure that everyone is safe. We haven't put anyone at risk. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep the safety of our employees and the safety of our visitors at the highest #1 priority for everyone. So technology can have a place in this space. There are technology screening solutions out there today. We can introduce those in easy fashions, whether it's at the front desk or at the front door or in a mobile device, that every individual has a mobile app that they have to go through a screening effort before they're allowed into the building. There's from the highest sophisticated technology offering to the lowest kind of tactical offering day to day. There's all variations of screening that can occur that ensures some level of safety and security, or at least visibility and understanding as individuals start coming back into the office as you reopen. So identify the points of entry. Potentially think about reducing those points of entry. You know, where do deliveries come into the office? How many elevators can people come up and down to be able to get to your office floor? Should you reduce the number of elevators that function? Should you not have elevators stop on the floor at all and only use the stairs because elevators are a confined space? Or do you make it so that there's somebody at each elevator entrance only allowing one person to go in at a time? All variations of decision making that should be part of this ecosystem. If you're leveraging technology, it absolutely allows for flexibility and scalability. So as you open up more areas of entry, you can add more levels of technology. It creates flexibility to allow for individuals to be scanned on an ad hoc basis, on a regular basis, however you might think is appropriate for your employee base. Whatever you do, you need to understand where that data associated with the scanning of the employee is captured and stored. We want to make sure that we're not impacting the personal identified information, or PII, impacting privacy rules, and ensuring that we understand where the data is stored, how it's stored, who has access to that data, and ensuring that we keep all of that information as secure as possible. And with that, integrating the system. So once you've identified that an individual does not have a temperature in this use case, how do they access the building? How do they access and come to their place of work inside the building? How do they get to their cube or office in the building? Who gets them there? All variations of the interaction and the integration that we can create for this. So human resources can be integrated into this, so they get alerts when there's a negative scan that occurs. Building access, you know, once you have a positive scan that you don't have a temperature in this use case, the door is open. The door is open without you having to touch anything. All variations of thinking that can go through. And then overall security. How do you make it so that if somebody does have a temperature and they should not enter the building, that individual is able to turn around and go home, and there's somebody there that's supporting that in a way to make sure that others that are on the floor are still maintained and being safe? And what happens when somebody does gain access to the floor that does test positive for a high temperature? How do you manage that through? All thinking and processes that technology can help support. Obviously, some of this is business process and planning as well, but all a piece of the puzzle that security can help with as we go back to the office, potentially go back to the office in this new way of working. So that's it for me today. I greatly appreciate your time. I'll turn this back over to Kathleen for a poll.
Okay, we have our final polling question, number 4. Where do I send my CPE evaluation form to obtain my CPE credit? To my SACS advisor? To me again? To the email address at the bottom of the form? Or I have no idea. So why don't you enter your polling results now? And again, if you're having trouble submitting your vote, click escape and then it should allow you to enter it. And while you're going through that, I just wanted to thank Carl for his presentation. We at SACS are so excited to be about our joint venture with S2 Solutions. And we're glad that they're going to help us with our technology transformation and creating a successful change plan for us here at SACS. And let's see how we're doing with the polling question. We are finished. And of course, you guys are all brilliant. You got it. You need to email to the address on the form. And just to repeat, we will be sending out the PowerPoint presentation along with a copy of the evaluation form if you weren't able to download it, for you to complete and send back to us. I just want to give you a couple more tools for technology information. If you have any questions or would like to schedule a complimentary assessment, you can email info@s2solutions.tech, or you can visit our website, s2technologies.tech. I always like to inform you that in order to keep up with the tax changes and the new information regarding the CARES Act, the stimulus packages, and of course the PPP loans and marketplace lending, we have our Thursday webinar tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We will go over the loan options and the forgiveness program. You should note that this morning the U.S. Treasury released the new updated loan forgiveness application. So make sure you sign in, register for tomorrow's event so we can give you all of the guidance that you need on the updated form. And if you have additional information regarding COVID-19, we have our email address there. Send your questions along, or just visit our COVID Resource Center on our website so that you can see previously recorded webinars or register for future webinars regarding updated issues. We have promised to continue to hold seminars through the end of the PPP program, so we have a couple more months to go. Stay in tune, stay up to date, use our resource center. And in addition, I'd like to thank Carl for his presentation again. This ends our program for today. I want to thank you for joining us. And for all of us at Saks, we wish you the best and hope you can join us for our next CFO series webinar, and have a great day.